The war was supposed to end quickly. At least that's what John Shepard had been told when the Union drafted him. The Galactic Union needed human soldiers to fill their endless fronts, and Earth had signed the treaties with little choice. John was one of the many shipped out, trained to fight enemies whose names he could barely pronounce. He thought he knew what war was. He had grown up seeing wars on Earth, images of burning cities, stories of soldiers who never came home. But when he first stepped onto a battlefield among the stars, he realized he had been wrong. War out here was not just blood and mud. It was fire that swallowed skies. It was fleets clashing like thunder gods. It was soldiers made in laboratories, giants armored and bred to kill. They called them Warborn. The Warborn were tall as towers, strong as machines, and fearless in combat. They were women created to be warriors first, daughters never, and wives almost never. They moved with brutal grace, their armor groaning under muscles that could bend steel. Most humans feared them. John had too, at first until he met Kathira. She was like the others in size and strength, towering over John with skin that shimmered faintly beneath the sun's. But where her sister's eyes were cold, Kathira's eyes burned with something different. There was fury, yes, but also mercy, a spark of warmth hidden under the fire. John met her on the blood-soaked soil of Draven 4. The sky there burned red with enemy bombardments, and every crater was a grave. His squad had been pinned down by artillery, men screaming and vanishing in the smoke. He thought he would die there, nameless and far from Earth. But Kathira came charging through the storm. Her blade was longer than John's body, her shield taller than 2 men. She fought like the ground itself obeyed her, crushing enemy lines with each swing. When John fell, shrapnel tearing his leg, it was Kathira who pulled him up. "On your feet, human," she commanded, her voice like thunder. John coughed blood but stood. Together they fought, back to back. The enemies came like waves, and together they held the line. He threw grenades, she broke walls with her fists. At one point, when his rifle jammed, Kathira tossed him one of her spare blades. It was heavier than anything he had carried, but in his hands it became hope. Hours later, when the smoke cleared and silence returned, only 2 figures stood among the wreckage. A scarred human soldier, trembling but alive, and a war-born giantess, blood running down her armor but unbroken. They looked at each other then. Truly looked. "You are small," Kathira said, voice shaking from exhaustion, "but you did not break. And you," John whispered, gripping the sword she had given him, "you are more than they say you are." For a moment the war faded. There were no fleets, no commanders, no laws of the Union. Just 2 souls who had carried each other through fire. That night, while the campfires burned low and the wounded groaned around them, Kathira sat beside John. He leaned against her massive frame, his head barely reaching her shoulder. Her hand, scarred and large enough to crush a man's skull, rested softly over his chest. "Humans," she murmured. "You bind yourselves with vows. On your world you speak promises with rings." John laughed weakly. "That's marriage. A vow of forever. But I don't have a ring." Kathira looked at him, her golden eyes shimmering. "Then vow with your hand." And so he did. He took her hand in his fingers disappearing inside her palm, and squeezed. His heart was too broken, his body too scarred, his world too far away. Yet in that moment he felt something pure. "I vow," he whispered, "that wherever there is fire, I will stand with you." Her lips parted, as though the words wounded her deeper than any blade. Slowly, Kathira bowed her head until her forehead rested against his. "And I vow," she answered, "that so long as I breathe, no harm will reach you." Beneath the ruined sky, 2 broken warriors made a vow, not of empires or laws, but of survival, of love born in fire. And though neither knew it then, that vow would one day shake the stars. The war ended, at least for them. Draven 4 was free and the Union sang songs of victory. But for John Shepard and Kathira, the true battle was only beginning. After the fighting, John remained with her unit. Humans and Warborn rarely mixed, but John had earned a place among them. He was not strong like they were, not built from the gene forges, but the Warborn respected courage more than strength. And John had shown them both. Kathira stayed close to him. She walked with him when the others marched, she guarded him when he slept, and she listened to his soft human stories when the camps grew quiet. They had shared blood on the battlefield. Now they shared silence, laughter, and the strange warmth that came when two hearts leaned toward each other. One evening, after weeks of peace, Kathira came to him. Her armor was gone, replaced by a robe of her people, though even plain cloth could not hide her size or strength. She stood at the edge of his quarters, her face unreadable. "John," she said quietly, "there is something you must know." He sat up, sensing the weight in her voice. "What is it?" She hesitated as though the words themselves were too heavy. Then she stepped closer, her golden eyes dim with sorrow. "When a Warborn binds herself to another, she does not bind alone. Our law is older than the Union itself. If one sister claims a husband, all her sisters must claim him too. It is the way of our bloodline. We are not allowed to divide." John blinked, unsure he had heard correctly. "You mean, marry them? All of them?" Kathira closed her eyes. "Yes." The silence that followed was sharp. John's mind raced. Kathira's sisters, the towering warriors he had seen fight beside her. He remembered their faces. Sierra, with sharp eyes and a voice like steel, fell scarred and silent, her strength unmatched. Oran, the youngest, who carried laughter even in war. They were her sisters, her family. And the law demanded that if John was to remain Kathira's husband, he must also be theirs. John's throat went dry. "What happens if we refuse?" Kathira's jaw tightened. Her voice dropped low, heavy with pain. "Then the council will strike our bond from record. You will be taken from me. They will erase every word we spoke, every vow we made. You will be sent back to Earth, and I will be forbidden to speak your name again." Her hands shook as she spoke. Kathira, who had lifted tanks and shattered enemy lines, was trembling like a child. "I do not want them, John," she whispered. "I want you, but I cannot break the law. If I break it, I lose you." John felt something twist inside his chest. He reached for her hand, the same massive hand that had once shielded him from fire. He held it tightly, though his own fingers barely reached across her palm. "You saved me," he said softly. "You fought with me. You gave me hope when I thought I had none. I vowed to stand with you. I didn't promise easy, Kathira. I promised forever." Her eyes widened, a tear sliding down her cheek. Warborn did not cry often, but she whispered, her voice shaking, "Can you bear it? To belong not only to me but to them? To be bound to women you do not love?" John thought of it. The image was strange, even frightening. He was only human, small and fragile in a galaxy that barely noticed his kind. To stand as husband not to one giantess but to four, it sounded impossible. And yet, wasn't everything between them impossible already? A soldier from Earth and a daughter of the Forges holding hands beneath ruined skies? Impossible and still real. He met her gaze, his voice steady. "I don't know what it will mean. I don't know if I'll be enough. But I know this. I will not let them take you from me. If binding myself to your sisters is the price, then I'll pay it." Kathira's lips trembled. She lowered herself, kneeling until her massive form bowed before him, and pressed her forehead to his. "You are human," she whispered, her voice breaking, "and yet you carry more strength than any Warborn I have known." In that moment, beneath the shadow of an ancient law, their love grew sharper, heavier, and more dangerous than before, for they were no longer fighting soldiers or fleets. They were fighting tradition itself, and tradition was a war far older and far harder to win. The news spread quickly. John Shepard, a human soldier, was to be bound not only to Kathira, but to her Warborn sisters as well. In the camps, whispers followed him. Some laughed, some shook their heads, others looked at him with envy. For most humans, the Warborn were terrifying. For John, they were family now, whether he liked it or not. Kathira walked with him through the great hall of steel and banners, her hand resting gently on his back as though to shield him from the stairs. The hall was wide enough to fit starships, yet John felt small, as though the walls were closing in. He knew what was waiting ahead, the 3 women who would soon be his wives in name if not in heart. The sisters stood together at the far end of the chamber. They were larger than life, each different, each dangerous in her own way. Sira was the first to speak. She was tall even for Warborn, her frame wrapped in ceremonial armor. Her eyes were sharp and cold, studying John like a blade studies flesh. "So this is the human," she said flatly. "The one who stole Kathira's heart." John swallowed hard but bowed slightly. "I didn't steal anything," he answered. "She gave it." The words made Kathira's lips curve into the faintest smile. Vel stepped forward next. She was scarred across the face, her expression unreadable. She carried herself like a fortress, silent, immovable, unyielding. Her voice was low and rough as if carved from stone. "I have fought beside you, human. You did not flee. That is worth something. But strength alone is not enough to stand as husband to Warborn." John met her gaze, forcing his voice not to shake. "Then I'll give more than strength." Vel tilted her head, saying nothing, but her silence was not rejection. It was respect. Then came Oran, the youngest. She had no scars, no armor that day. Her hair was braided simply, her eyes softer than her sister's. She looked at John with something close to curiosity, almost wonder. "You are smaller than I thought," she said honestly, her lips twitching with the start of a smile. John laughed nervously. "I get that a lot." The sound of his laugh echoed strangely in the chamber, breaking the tension like a fragile light. Even Oran laughed with him, though her sisters stayed silent. Kathira stepped forward then, placing herself between John and her siblings. "This is my husband," she said firmly, her voice filled with quiet fire. "I chose him. He is not like us, but he fought for me. He bled for me. And he stood when others would have fallen." Sira's eyes narrowed. "And now by law he must belong to us as well. Does the human understand this?" John straightened his back. His heart hammered, but he met their eyes one by one. "I understand. Maybe not fully. Maybe I never will. But I know what it means to keep a vow. I gave Kathira mine. If being with her means standing with all of you, then I'll stand." For a long moment silence filled the hall. The sisters studied him, their massive forms like shadows of mountains looming above him. Finally Vel broke the silence. She stepped closer and placed one scarred hand on his shoulder. The weight of it nearly buckled him, but he stayed firm. "He is iron," she said simply. Oran smiled, her eyes soft. "He is small, but he is brave. I like him." Sira was the last to speak. She circled John slowly, her eyes still sharp, her movements predatory. Then she stopped in front of him, folding her arms. "If you fail," she said, her voice cold and final, "you will not only shame Kathira, you will shame all of us." "Warborn do not forgive failure," John nodded, steady but pale. "Then I won't fail." Kathira exhaled softly, relief flickering across her face. She reached down and clasped his hand in hers, their fingers entwined as if to anchor each other. The meeting was not warm. It was not filled with love or laughter. It was heavy, sharp like a blade pressed against the skin, yet beneath it something had shifted. The sisters had not rejected him. They had tested him, weighed him, and found him worth keeping, at least for now. As they left the hall, Kathira whispered to him, "You spoke well, John. My sisters are hard as stone, but you did not bend." He smiled faintly, though his chest still felt tight. "I wasn't speaking to them. I was speaking to you." And for the first time since the law had been revealed, Kathira allowed herself to hope, because maybe, just maybe, the impossible could be endured. The Council of the Union was never gentle with its laws. What they wrote on paper, they enforced with blood. And so, when word spread that a human soldier had been bound to a Warborn and now stood to be tied to her sisters as well, The council demanded proof, not words, not vows, but a trial. In the great chamber of stars, the judgment was spoken. The human must lead the sisters in battle. Only if he proves unity among them will this marriage be recognized. If he fails, the bond will be broken. His place among the Warborn will be erased. The words were heavy as chains. John listened, jaw clenched, Kathira's hand gripping his so tightly his bones ached. Afterward, in the quiet of their quarters, Kathira's voice shook. It is not fair. You are not made to lead us. They want you to fail. They want me to lose you. John touched her face gently, his thumb brushing the scar near her jaw. Then we don't give them what they want. She lowered her gaze, towering but trembling. You will stand before fleets, John. You will command sisters who have never taken orders from a human. If they falter, if we fail, they will take you from me. John looked up at her, his voice steady. Kathira, I survived a battlefield at your side. I survived the day we should have both died. This trial, it's just another war, and war is what I know. The next morning the trial began. A fleet of marauders had risen from the void, raiding border worlds. Their ships were fast, brutal, and merciless. The council decreed this would be the field where John proved himself. The sisters gathered with him on the deck of the Union warship. Sira stood tall, her eyes sharp, always calculating. Fel checked her weapons, silent and unmovable as stone. Oran hummed under her breath, trying to hide her nerves with a smile. And Kathira. Kathira never let go of John's arm, as though her touch alone would keep him alive. John stood before them, armor strapped tight, his rifle at his side. He felt small, smaller than ever, surrounded by these titans. But when he spoke, his voice carried. I know what you're thinking, he began. That I'm too small, too weak, too human to lead you. And maybe you're right. But I'll tell you this, together we can't lose. Because you're not just soldiers, you're sisters. And if you can fight for each other, then I'll fight for you. No law, no council, no enemy is stronger than that. The sisters exchanged glances. Even Sira's hard eyes softened for a moment. Fel gave a single nod. Oran grinned, whispering, He talks like Kathira. Kathira's chest swelled with pride. The order came, and their ship tore into the black. Stars streaked past, then burned with fire as the marauder fleet appeared. Dark shapes blotting out the light, hungry for blood. Positions. John barked, his voice sharp. He pointed to the battle maps glowing on the console. Sira, you've got the brain, cut their formation. Fel, shield the flank, nothing gets through you. Oran, you move fast, hit where they don't expect. Kathira, his eyes met hers, burning. You're with me. We break their heart. The sisters obeyed, not out of law, but out of trust. The battle began. Plasma fire lit the void. Ships clashed like titans, steel ripping, shields blazing. The sisters moved as John commanded, each strike cutting deeper into the enemy lines. Sira's plans outsmarted the marauder captains. Vel's shield wall broke their charge. Oran darted like a hawk through shadows. At the center, John and Kathira stood together, leading the charge into the largest ship. Fire rained down, explosions tearing the decks apart. John's rifle sang, Kathira's blade roared, and the two of them fought as though war itself had forged them. When the marauder dreadnought finally cracked, its engines exploding in a star-bright flame, the Union fleet watched in awe. One human, too small for their armor, too fragile for their wars, had led the Warborn sisters into victory. On the deck, smoke still rising, John's voice rang out over the comms. We fight as family. No law stronger than that. Kathira looked at him then, her golden eyes shining. She saw not a fragile human, not a pawn of the council, but a man who had turned her sisters into a weapon greater than any fleet. And in that moment, she knew. The trial had already been won. The stars were not quiet after the trial began. The marauders came like a storm, and the void itself seemed to shatter with the weight of their fleet. Ships screamed through space, their weapons carving fire into the black. The Union had thought the trial would be a simple raid, but this was war. John stood at the center of it, his heart pounding against his ribs. The weight of the sisters' trust pressed on him heavier than any armor. Yet he did not falter. His voice carried through the comms, clear and sharp. "Stay together. Don't let them split us. Strike where they're weakest." The sisters obeyed. Syrah's mind was a blade. She saw patterns in the chaos, predicting the enemy's moves before they made them. Her orders cut through confusion, guiding the fleet with precision. Ships moved where she commanded, and the marauders broke like waves against stone. Vel was the wall. She planted herself on the front lines, shield raised, holding back enemy fire as if her body itself was a fortress. Plasma blasts struck her again and again, but she stood unmoved, a mountain of iron. Every soldier behind her lived because she refused to fall. Oran was the shadow. She darted through the void with speed that no enemy could match. Her strike sudden, fierce, and unexpected. She laughed as she fought, the sound bright and sharp even in the chaos. Where she moved, enemies vanished, and Kathira was the storm. She and John fought side by side, back to back. She swung her blade with fire in her eyes, and John's rifle sang in answer. They moved together like they had on Draven 4, every strike in rhythm, every step in harmony. The marauders came harder. Their dreadnought loomed, a beast of steel and fire, its weapons lighting up the dark. The Union fleet staggered under its might, ships burning, men screaming. John's voice cut through the panic. "We take the heart. Kathira with me," she answered with a roar, and together they charged. The dreadnought swallowed them, corridors twisting with smoke and blood. Enemies poured from every side, armored giants of another breed. John's rifle blazed. Kathira's blade tore through steel, and still they came. At one point, when John slipped on the scorched deck, an enemy lunged with a blade. Before it could strike, Vel's massive shield slammed down, crushing the attacker. She pulled John to his feet with one arm, silent but steady. "Stand," she growled. Later, when the enemy tried to flank them, Oran appeared from the shadows, blades flashing, laughter fierce. "Not today," she cried, cutting them down before they touched him. And when they reached the core, Syrah was already there, her voice echoing through the comms. "The weak point is marked. Strike now!" John planted the charges, Kathira guarding him with her body, her blade a wall of fire. The dreadnought shook, alarm screaming. They ran, the sisters forming around John as the ship tore itself apart. The explosion lit the void like a second sun. The marauder fleet faltered, their lines broken, their will shattered. The Union fleet surged, victory crashing over them like a wave. When the battle ended, silence fell. Smoke drifted across the stars, broken ships turning slowly in the void. On the deck, John removed his helmet. His face was streaked with blood and sweat, his eyes hollow but burning. He looked at the sisters, Syrah with her sharp pride, Vel with her silent strength, Oran with her wild grin, and Kathira with her golden eyes full of fire. "You see?" he said, voice rough but steady. "We fight as one. No law, no council, no enemy is stronger than family." For a moment none of them spoke. Then Oran laughed, throwing her arms around him with a force that nearly broke his ribs. "You're small," she said, "but you roar like a giant." Vel placed her scarred hand on his shoulder, her voice low. "You are iron, human. You did not bend." Syrah gave the faintest nod, her eyes softer than before. "Perhaps Kathira was right to choose you." And Kathira pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his. "You are mine," she whispered, "and theirs. But above all, you are ours." In that moment, John understood something. He was not just surviving their law. He was becoming part of them, piece by piece, battle by battle. The Council had demanded proof. The galaxy had doubted, but the fire and blood of war had given its answer. One human, small and fragile, had led giants, and together they had burned the stars. The battle was won, but the war inside John's heart was not. When the fleet limped back to Union space, the soldiers sang of victory, but John only felt the weight of silence pressing down on him. He had led Kathira's sisters through fire, and they had followed. Yet he wondered, was it duty or was it something more? The council prepared its verdict, but before the law could speak, the sisters gave theirs. They met in a quiet chamber, far from the shouts of soldiers and the echo of war drums. The air was heavy with incense, the walls lined with banners of the Warborn. Jon stood small in the center, Kythera beside him, her hand resting protectively on his back. The sisters entered one by one. Sira first, her stride sharp and sure. Vel next, silent as a mountain. Oran last, her smile faint but eyes bright. They formed a circle around Jon, towering shadows that closed him in. Sira spoke first. Her voice was like steel, cold but steady. Human, you carried us through battle. You saw the storm and did not run. Many of our kind have failed where you stood. You are fragile, but your spirit is strong. For that you have my respect. She lowered her gaze, bowing her head. A rare gift from one as proud as Sira. Vel stepped forward next. She did not bow. She placed her scarred hand on Jon's shoulder, the weight of it nearly bending him. Her touch was heavy but not cruel. I thought you would break, she said, her deep voice rumbling. But you did not. You held when others would have fallen. You are not stone but iron, and iron is harder than stone. You have my strength. Her words were simple, but Jon felt them like armor laid over his heart. Then Oran moved. Soft and swift, she crouched down so her face was closer to his, her braid falling over her shoulder. Her smile was wide, her eyes shimmering with tears she did not hide. You are brother, husband, anchor. You made me laugh in the fire. You made me brave when I was afraid. You are small, Jon, but you are greater than giants. You have my joy. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead lightly against his, the gesture of deepest trust among Warborn. Jon's throat tightened. He looked at them, three women who were not his by choice, yet who had given him pieces of their hearts. Finally, Kythera spoke. She stepped in front of her sisters, her golden eyes burning with sorrow and hope. Jon, she whispered, her voice breaking, this is the moment. The law says you must be bound not only to me but to them, yet I cannot force you. If this burden is too heavy, say the word, and I will fight the law itself. Even if it means losing everything, I will not see you broken. The chamber went silent. The air was thick, each sister waiting, watching him. Jon's chest ached. He thought of Earth, far away and lost. He thought of the first time he had seen Kythera on that battlefield, her blade like fire in the smoke. He thought of Sira's sharp mind, Vel's unbreakable shield, Oran's bright laugh. He thought of vows whispered beneath ruined skies. His voice shook, but his words did not. I am only human. I don't have your strength, your size, your power, but I have something else, something no law can take from me. I have a vow. I gave it to Kythera, and if that vow binds me to you all, then I will keep it, because love isn't a cage, it's a fire, and there's enough in me to keep it burning for all of you. Kythera gasped softly, covering her mouth with her hand. Tears burned in her eyes. Sira's lips parted in surprise. Vel nodded once, firm and slow. Oran smiled through her tears, her laugh trembling like glass. In that chamber, the sisters gave their verdict, not in words but in silence, in tears, in respect. They accepted him, not as a prisoner of law, but as one of them. And for the first time since the law had been spoken, Jon felt not fear, but peace. The council would still speak. The galaxy would still judge, but the hearts that mattered most had already chosen. The sisters had claimed him, and he had claimed them all. The council gave its judgment under the banners of the Union. The trial was complete, the law satisfied. The human had led the sisters into victory, and the galaxy had seen it with its own eyes. By decree, Jon Shepherd was bound not to one Warborn, but to 4. The words were spoken in the grand chamber, echoing across the stone walls. The bond is ratified. By the law of the Union, this human is husband to Kythera, Sira, Vel, and Oran. Their bloodline is united. Their vow is eternal. Cheers erupted around them. Soldiers shouted, commanders applauded, banners waved. To the galaxy, this was a spectacle. Something strange, something to whisper about. But to Jon, the noise meant nothing. When the ceremony ended and the banners were lowered, he found himself outside, beneath the stars. The night was quiet. the air cool against his skin. He breathed deeply as if he could wash the weight from his chest. Kathira came first. She sat beside him, her massive frame folding carefully so as not to crush the stone bench. Her golden eyes searched his face. "It is done," she whispered. John nodded, his voice low. "Yes, it's done." But Kathira's hand trembled as she reached for his. "You should hate me for this," she said. "I brought you into a bond you did not choose. I dragged you into a law that was never yours. You are human, John. You should have been free." John turned his hand and gripped hers tightly. "Free? Kathira, I was a soldier on Earth. I fought wars I didn't believe in. I bled for people who never knew my name. I was never free there. But here?" He looked at her, his eyes fierce, his voice steady.
"Here I chose you.
"And every day after, I'll keep choosing you. The rest, I'll choose again as many times as it takes." Kathira's lips trembled. For a giant bred for war, she suddenly looked so fragile. She leaned forward until her forehead touched his. For a moment, the world was only the sound of their breaths, the quiet hum of two hearts that had survived fire together. Then the others joined them. Sira stood behind him, tall and sharp as ever, but her expression softer than he had ever seen. "You are bound now," she said. "Not just by law, but by us. Fail us, and the galaxy will not need to punish you. We will, but succeed, and you will have our loyalty forever." Vel came next, silent until she placed her heavy hand on his shoulder. "We fought," she said simply. "We lived. You are ours now. That is enough." And Oran, the youngest, knelt in front of him, her smile bright and trembling. "You are small," she whispered him, "but you carry us all. Brother, husband, anchor, you are the fire in the dark, and I will laugh beside you until the stars burn out." John looked at them all. Kathira with her fierce love, Sierra with her sharp pride, Vel with her unbreakable strength, Oran with her bright joy. 4 giants, warriors forged in war, and yet they stood around him not as soldiers but as family. He rose slowly, his voice carrying in the quiet night. The council had its law, the galaxy had its doubts. But listen to me now, there is nothing stronger than this. You are my wives, my family, my sisters in arms, and I will not let any war, any law, any power tear us apart. The sisters stood with him, their forms towering like mountains, their eyes shining like stars. For a long moment, none spoke. The night stretched soft and endless, wrapping around them like a cloak. Kathira finally whispered, "Then it is settled. Human, you are ours. Human, you are mine. Human, you are forever." And John Shepherd, small, scarred human, smiled, because he understood at last. Love was not fragile, not a weakness. It was fire. It burned in Kathira's heart, in her sister's strength, and in his own soul. The galaxy had its laws. The Union had its trials. But out here, beneath the endless stars, a vow whispered in war had become eternal, and the truth of it would echo forever. Humans do not love half-hearted.